It was just shooting randomly outside the house.
Where's this?
In Doylestown.
I think it says it in some of the notes when you see the calculation of the millage.
Wow.
It says at the 3.5 discount rate.
Okay.
So when you see how we described it, that's.
Okay, that's what I saw. All right.
It's not gonna end well.
Yeah, okay, I see it. Yep, I did see that. We did on each one of the sections of the budget.
Probably got dog ear. I forgot.
You better stop.
She's dog earing pages. That's an insult to the document.
Listen, it's my thing.
If I'm insulted by the document.
That's it.
Too bad.
That's all right, okay.
Sure I'll be. I will be.
Hey, John, how's our volume? Can you hear us back there? Okay, good.
Testing 1, 2.
Mics are hot.
And
You don't care.
No, I just wanted to make sure people can hear.
yeah, we wouldn't want to be in violation.
Ooh, look at that insurance go.
I saw that.
Should be downstairs in the rec board meeting.
Is that going on down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Remember I
supposed to.
said I thought it was next week?
I know.
Maybe
I
I
told
can't.
them that too, because they thought they were gonna meet up here. I said, no, you're gonna have to get in.
Did they move the date?
It's on page 2.
Did they move it?
Yeah, she moved it to the first, but the whole calendar for next year is for the second Thursday.
Shows it.
She gotta let somebody know.
I don't know how that got online then. I have no idea.
Was that?
No,
I didn't think so.
it is what it is.
Why does she need a picture of us?
Last year's just in case.
Oh, look at that. I've done that for the past 2 years. That's helpful. Wait for time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the discounted appliance system.
No, but even the discount.
It's kind of what we're just talking about. The millage for us
Reaching out to the school
doesn't
district.
vary that much.
What's that?
right?
Have you been reaching out to the school district about the bridge construction?
I emailed when I sent out that email to you.
That's the discounted rate. Actually, the county hasn't released the 2020's millage estimates yet.
Okay, yeah, because that's what we talked about last night.
Okay.
They're gonna put it on the website and they're also gonna include dates in the phone blast.
That's what they're sanding the wood, as a matter of fact.
You can keep one for,
Yes. Thank you. Only one. More than I gotta charge you.
Yeah, really. They used to charge you for it.
We're going back to that. It's all right.
No, you know that. My right to nose to the authority before I change it. Miranda wasn't breathing down there.
Have I? No. It's just a passing, nothing major yet.
All rise.
Don't let it.
I'm sure you've heard that before, so since,
I have, yes, thank you very much. It's a TV show now, isn't it?
I don't know what she's talking about.
Corinne, did you print or do you need a copy?
Can I get a copy?
Sure.
Thank you.
Who's parent with the parent?
Yeah.
Because it would be something that would happen. You don't have that, so.
I'm gonna do it just in case.
They're painting the offices in my office. It's like winter green color.
So this whole corner is infected, is that what you're saying?
No, they've been painting my offices, so if I'm coughing. Are we started, by the way?
He probably has parking tickets he needs some help.
Taking favors already.
Good, 6:30, right?
Time yet.
6:30.
Oh, there's gavel, right?
We're informal tonight.
Okay, does everybody speak up? The speakers are on so that everyone can hear you. We're being recorded. It is 6:30. This is the budget meeting of Morrisville Borough, November 7th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Everyone got these in their packet yesterday. Hopefully you had a chance to look it over. Jot down any questions you will have. We're going to do like we normally do. I'll actually have Scott go over this for you also. If you guys want to start with that first page, you can see the millage funds in there. There's a breakdown of what your current mills are, projected ones that would be needed. Yes.
Madam President, if I could, before we have Scott go through it, I'd just like to wage my concern with this.
Okay.
Scott, Micah, I like what you guys did, and I know you guys focused on what our goals and focuses have been with paving and so forth. I'm not comfortable raising taxes on people when we're not clear that that's the going forward focus. So what I would like to actually see in general is that to be pulled out. These additional mills that we're looking for to do the street lighting, the library fund, the street fund. I don't think we can guarantee that it will be used the way it's intended currently. So I'd like to see that come out. And if the new council wants to reopen and do something towards their goals and focuses, that gives them the opportunity to do that.
Now, just so people know, we're talking about the dedicated funds.
Yes.
Not the dedicated
general
funds.
fund, yes.
Dedicated.
So like, we've been paving roads and we want to do more, and I see that you wanted to build an increase for that, and I get that. However, I don't think that, from my understanding and my belief, that's not going to be a going forward thing, and if it is, it could be reopened and addressed at that point.
Okay,
This is just a draft
Yep.
for council's review and discussion tonight. So the public is aware, there's not going to be any voting taking place tonight. This is basically a public work session.
correct.
And it's to get feedback from council on the budget so that we can revise it and present you with a proposed budget for adoption at your November meeting.
Yep.
Yes.
So then if you turn to the draft budget page, the first page, you will see the general fund to the left. You will see the dedicated funds to the right. What Scott and Micah have done here is they've put what the millage rate is. Each one of those are set by the state. And then you can see underneath in the small numbers is if you would decide that you were adding in extra millage on those things, that's it there. But like he's saying, this is a draft. Mr. Yeager said his concerns about it, but right now the dark ones are the millage you were already set at this point.
I'd like to see it stay static.
Okay. As you can see, before we get into the different fund accounts, we're at 30 mils, which is where we were last year. If the other ones, dedicated ones, are not increased, you're at 16.85. So it's it's come up as a balance at this point, according to what council decides to do. Anyone have anything they want to say about that first page, or? if you brought your previous ones, but it is the same as you had in your
I have it.
previous, yeah, it is the same,
Yep.
just so you know.
Yeah, 46.85 is what it was last year,
Correct.
and the year before.
So the difference would be in those dedicated funds. Okay, guess we'll go on to the general fund. Well, that's the biggest fund we deal with tonight. We'll try and get through as much as we can with that. So if you go on to the first page, say everybody had a chance to look at them at home, review them. We'll go, and instead of going line by line, you can take a look at them and see if there's something you would like to bring up about it. You can see where our current assets are. And then where we begin with our revenues. Our mills are at, you said the discounted numbers you were doing at 59,473, right, is how you're estimating?
Yep.
So Scott, how comfortable are you with calling out that surplus 161,000 from carryover from last year, from this year, I should say?
It's a projection, but it's an honest projection.
Good.
So.
Okay, that's good then.
And Scott, since
So when
we're,
you're, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, and since we're in November, are there any other major expenses coming in between now and the end of the year that are not in here?
Yes, the borough has a lot of fourth quarter expenses.
Okay.
We've accounted for them as best we can in our projection, but if you're looking at the line item detail in tab 3, it's giving you a comparison to our current year budget, year-to-date, as of September 30th.
Gotcha.
But yes, the borough does have a lot of fourth quarter expenses, and
Well, before you start jumping all over and get back into the expenditure part of it, is there any questions on the revenue side of it? Because that's where you're at.
So is that 161,668.30, is that's projected just till right now? That's
Yep.
not obviously including anything that might come up?
some of these numbers may shift because when we present you with a final budget for adoption in December, as you know, we will update the line item detail section that you're looking at to be through the end of October
Right.
versus the end of September. So it'll be, 10 months in. But I don't think we're going to see anything drastic that we've not.
And
So that
if you,
161 is, if something unknown pops up, then
Right.
that's a different story, but it should be pretty solid.
yeah, and if you look at the percentages, you'll see where you are year-to-date, what the annual was for last year, and how much you've used to this point. So you can see which lines there are and which are also going to have revenue that's waiting to come in, that are guaranteed ones, like your cable franchise fees, those ones come in later. I think some of them, don't they come in January too?
Yeah, in fact, we just got one of the third quarter or second quarter.
Third quarter.
Third quarter ones today.
Okay.
But yes, the fourth quarter ones don't come in until like early February
Oh, okay.
of the following year. So
So that's where some of that projection also is coming from, because if you look at those percentages, you'll see some of those that are, are guaranteed fees that you can project that are going to be coming in later.
Okay, and overall, you're expecting revenues to go up by $172,000. 42 of that's coming from trash, obviously, because the trash contract goes up.
well, plus you're going to be doing the annual adjustment of the fee schedule, and we've accounted for that.
That's
so.
good. And is that the mainstay of it then? Yeah. Okay, because that was going to be my questions, is that we and it was going to be later, but did we find any specific fees that we're charging that were under or even over that we're charging?
No, the fee schedule was primarily, the annual adjustment for trash collection, of course. There were some minor adjustments in categories that, in fact, I think you guys saw it,
Yep.
saw it yesterday, so we'll talk about it Tuesday in more detail, I guess. But we did adjust a few sections that we did not deal with the previous two times after we had the big update to the fee schedule. And that was like fees for, reports from the fire marshal and things like that. Road opening permits, in light of the new restoration requirements that the borough adopted for utilities, that sort of thing. They were relatively minor.
Good.
I see on the sanitation prior years, we always said that the bulk of that was going to be in the beginning when we started collecting that, a couple of years ago, we started that. We were projecting 150, we're at 87,167.49. You're probably going to get we're probably not going to get to that point, would you say? That's why it's being lowered for what's projected for next year, I'm assuming, right? It's at 118,927, yeah, which is about, it's better than over projecting it. It's hard to say. I mean, I look at that every month come in, but it's getting to the meat of the bones of what they're going after,
There's actually going to be an updated report in your delivery Friday from Portnoy as to the total portfolio and its status, including what was submitted to them this year for collection, as well as the weekly update. So you'll see that in better detail on Friday.
Great.
Let me ask you on that, as it gets down through the years with that, and you're getting into, like I said, the meat of that, is there, get to a point where there's going to be, they're not going to be able to get any more after that? Because we
Yes.
pulled in a lot so far in the last couple of
It's
years.
been my experience with collections, anybody who's had been in a business where you deal with collections, the older the AR gets, the more difficult, if not impossible, it becomes to collect. So probably a good chunk of that portfolio will never be collectible just because it's so stale.
Right?
But I think Portnoy has done a pretty good job with
Yeah, they
what
have.
they were given so
I
far.
mean,
So
it does tend to be a little bit different than some collection work, only because it's attached to the sale of the property. So if it's that past due and then the property all of a sudden sells, it's got to be done at closing.
So some of that might have to wait until
Some of that may just
then.
roll in, but
Yeah.
you just got to wait until it happens.
there may also be a large portion of that portfolio that the property owner has left prior to collection activity
Yes.
even starting. So that almost is going to end up in a dead file at some point.
Yeah.
Now, the recycling performance grant, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I believe I looked into it at one point. I thought there was a statute of limitations of collecting on it because it's considered a service. Have we considered that as well? Now, that doesn't mean the collection agency can't go after it.
I don't think that applies to municipal liens.
Okay.
The last meeting we were talking, you announced that we got the 16,000. That's from this recycling performance grant? So is that the line for that, or was it
Well,
a separate line?
well,
Or we didn't get it?
Well, hold on. We might be getting a little ahead of ourselves on that. Remember, we were in the, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 range when we started with Huff Associates.
Okay.
They got for us, based on 2017 data, I think you saw the check from
Yeah.
the state recently. It was a little over $11,000.
Right.
We received word just recently that the filing for 18, so we will get that check probably next summer, July sometime, is going to be a scooch over $18,000.
Okay.
So if we can continue that trend, unless our friends in the state make some revision to the program, that would,
I think, was it 16 that we saw? It looked like an influx, but it was really 15 and 16 that came in because it
that's
was
correct,
filed
yes.
properly.
Yeah, it was 2 years were done at once, I believe,
That's what I
but that predated me, so I don't know much
So
about it.
that's something we would show for next
Just from a
year.
trend perspective, I'm pointing that out because it made it look like we did a lot that year, but it was really 2 years.
Got it. Okay.
With the trash fees, it's a $10 increase for residents this year.
And 20 for commercial,
Yep,
yes.
we are proposing, if you want to
$320.
skip to tab 5, it'll be $320 and $620 respectively. And we showed you 2017 and 2018 actual performance, 2019 budget, 2020's projection. But yes, we cannot project beyond 2020 because the current contract expires the end of 2020. So probably early spring, March, April, we'll be talking to council about bid specifications for the new term of the contract. And I need to caution you while we're on this subject, because if you look around at surrounding municipalities that have gone through this just recently, Middletown Township being an example, recycling, what's going on in the recycling markets is really killing everybody. So I want to manage your expectations and suggest to you that you should anticipate a sharp increase in costs by haulers in the next round of bids.
It's got to be super clean for them to take it at this point.
And it's hard to get anybody to take
Yep.
it. That, or you're going to be faced with the possibility of ending curbside residential recycling. I mean, that's just the raw reality.
Oh, wow.
It sucks. All right.
And there's a lot of information. If you're interested in this subject, I'm really not, but unfortunately, I've been having to follow it far more than I would normally care to. We've posted a lot of information on public portal on the website about recycling and what's going on with the recycling market, so.
But just looking at this, just for the public's knowledge, residential is going to go up $10 a year, commercial is going up $20 a year, and non-participating $10 a year.
Yes.
Yes. Yep,
That's because of every year our contract.
correct.
That's just to cover the new contract, the
Contractual.
yearly increase in contract.
Yeah, I think you'll find overall, this budget is very much what I would call a status quo budget, except for what we were suggesting to council in terms of your specific millage funds, because we have a number of those funds that are underperforming, and there's some deferred maintenance issues that making adjustments there would help. And certainly, you know, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the issue with road paving, because our roads are just in deplorable condition, so.
Okay. On the,
To the expenses, right?
yeah, I think revenues, unless somebody has anything else they want to say about any of these lines, but they're pretty, like you said, status quo.
Building permit and street fees,
Yeah, well,
261%.
yeah, I think
Nice.
part of even Scott was saying the school did a big revitalization, we call it.
Renovation.
Renovation. I'm tongue-tied.
Yeah, there were several projects this year done throughout the borough
That did that.
that, by private entities and one by the school district that are one-offs.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you're going to see this year, but it's not something you're going to be able to bank on in future years. One, of course, was the renovation project done at the school district. One of the apartment complexes in the borough was sold, so they had to get UNOs for every single unit, and that was very involved and took months. And there were a couple of smaller ones too, but those are anomalies.
So that's why you had a big jump in that this year
Yeah.
with the extra revenue.
And under management salaries, I'm assuming that $20,000 difference is just moving from one to
Yes.
another? Yeah, because that's not going down. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions on the revenue?
The only material increases to this budget over current year budget is really accounting for our contractual obligations
Yep.
in terms of employees, and the projection for increases to insurance,
Right.
primarily health insurance, which I think if you do back of the envelope math, we're projecting a 15% increase. To that, we won't have that number because our plan doesn't actually renew until February 1. Every year, that's the case. So we won't actually have a solid number to use versus the 15% projection until December sometime.
And I imagine we're looking at things like this, and I don't want to get into detail over it, but certainly we're looking at, you got the same 30,000 in legal fees from year to year?
Yes.
Is that reasonable?
No.
I didn't think so.
I think,
So you got stuff going on.
I mean, I think there's a historical pattern here that we budget for what we hope to spend, knowing full well that things happen during the normal course of business. And we have to deal with things like illegal recovery houses that no one anticipated popping up, or a rogue party house that has to be dealt with, or misconduct by an employee that might get them in hot water that has legal fees attributed to it. So
The expectation is that the borough is going to be handling those things. We got to be able to pay for it.
Yep.
I remember what it was last year. Were we about the same amount of expenditures offhand, did you know, from what we ended up so far to date? Like we're now.
Actually, I think we're below where we were last year.
It was even more, so it's been a couple of years of this over the legal fees. Okay.
Is there more liability insurance coming out that we're expecting for this year, or is that $48,000 that we've spent pretty much where it's going to be, or is there another disbursement going out?
I think there is another insurance disbursement before the end of the year. Don't we prepay something? Yeah, there's going to be another insurance disbursement coming out later this year, but our non-healthcare related insurance costs this year are actually pretty consistent with last year. So.
Is there any way for us to get information from an engineering perspective? Now, we spent a lot on engineering this year for projects. Is there a way to get data that says this is the stuff that isn't really project oriented, it's just what you have to spend for your engineering fees?
Well, I know this is a hot topic for some people. It's difficult to pinpoint because with every project you do and with every grant we apply for, the rules are different. Some grants cover no engineering. Some grants cover engineering that are construction related only. None of them cover the cost of applying
right.
or really even compliance. Those are soft costs that the borough as applicant and owner is expected to absorb. So I get where you're coming from on that, and I think that's probably not possible for us to fulfill with AMS. But I think once Edmunds GovTech is in place next year, in 2021, we would probably be able to better sort that cost data for you.
Just don't have the tools currently. Got it.
Yeah.
Scott, regarding the engineering services, the last 2 years, we have budgeted $35,000 on that line item.
Yes.
Year to date in 2018, we're at $172,000, and year to date this year, we're at $142,000, but still only budgeted at $35,000. So is there a way that we can budget a more realistic number for that line item going forward?
I think you tried to last year and we said no.
We attempted that last year, not only with engineering, but for the current year budget, not only for engineering, but also for legal. And we got a lot of pushback from council, and we went back to the old way of, we're going to stick with this number and do your best to try to live with that number, but we realize it's not realistic and you'll likely go over.
Yeah, and that's the issue. It's not a truthful number.
Yeah.
It's not.
And so, even if we plugged in something like 150K, which would be more realistic, that's going to change our overall budget, obviously, by adding 150,000. But at least we'd be truthful in that, and that's the important thing for me.
But it's only truthful if we're getting grants and doing projects. You get what I'm saying? So
no, that's not. That has nothing to do with it.
It does.
No, these are known expenses. Go back to 2018, and we spent over about the same amount. So year over year, Mike, we're spending the same amount of money, but we've only budgeted $35,000. Do you understand?
Because we're doing projects. If the projects are not the focus of the new
You won't
council,
use it.
you won't be using that money, right? Because and those monies are coming out of grants that we're applying for and work that we're doing.
Well,
so if we're not going to be doing those things, it's not going to be
How does it project how much?
I get where you're both coming from, and you're both right, but what makes it more difficult is, you've got, as Mr. Ney was alluding to, fixed engineering costs and MS4 obligations, which all ends up coming out of general engineering. Even if you only did those things, you're still likely to exceed the budgeted line item of the $30,000.
Which is what I was asking.
Right, for a municipality
Right,
of our size, with our complexity, the things we have going on and our responsibilities, that's just not a realistic number anymore.
And,
but-
and these engineering services are actually engineering services to the borough. These aren't projects. In other words, projects are on different line items broken out at the end of the budget.
Right, but yeah, some of that engineering expense is related to projects, because like if the actual cost of doing a grant application and the compliance.
That goes into this line item?
And if the grant fund doesn't cover certain aspects of engineering, then that falls back to your general engineering category, which is that one.
Okay.
So
bottom line, how do we get a more realistic number in there?
The new software.
Well, the new software will certainly help us in being more honest with ourselves.
Well, here's something that we know about. Regardless, we don't have the software. We don't need the software for that. We can see the budgeted number is way below what we've spent for the last 2 years.
Yep. The only other way to address it would be to allocate a more realistic number, budget a more realistic number for engineering.
Right. And I would propose that going forward. We need to do that.
Well, why don't we up it to 50 if you said 35 may not cover just what we do baseline?
But we've been spending close to 200. So 150 would be a more realistic.
Not necessarily with the new council coming in.
I don't know that.
Well, no, we don't. We don't, and you don't know that it is going to be that way. We don't know either way, but all we can do is look at the past expenditures.
The difference.
Ted, audience, I mean, this way, we can't hear
Ted
coming
hasn't said
from
anything.
outside. Not Ted, I mean, this way.
What's the matter?
Oh, okay.
We can't hear that way if you don't want to.
I can't see you, so I don't know what this way is, what way this way.
I'm talking over here on this side
I
of the
can't
table.
see
We can't
you.
hear my.
You want that?
Danielle.
Oh, where I lean.
Is that good?
You might want it, yeah, but I'm just saying, as you're speaking further back, we can't hear you in the audience.
Maybe if you moved up in the first seat, you could hear better.
The air is very loud back there, like Ted's saying, if you can pull a microphone, you can hear it a little easier.
So where do we want to, I'm
Be
sorry,
rude about it.
I'm not.
Where do
just
we
saying,
wanna
you might be
pull-
able to hear better.
the other $100,000 from? 115,000 from, to get engineering services to 150? Where are we going to cut?
Good question.
You can either cut your way to that number, or you can increase revenue to that number. That's council's choice.
We don't have tax the residents.
It's our choice every year.
Well, we'll have to look at that for sure. This isn't the only budget meeting, right?
No.
Well, it's the only meeting dedicated solely to the budget,
Okay.
but I don't think it'll be the last discussion on the budget before
Right.
the end of the year.
Okay, and then we have another budget meeting tomorrow.
Yes, there is a part 2 of this meeting for tomorrow night if council chooses to take advantage of it.
I mean, if you're going to increase your engineering services, then you should increase your legal fees as well. Because you're over budget on your legal fees for this year.
Yep, I agree.
But not 406%.
I'm sorry?
I said not 406%.
No. Not yet.
Do we have any way of knowing out of what year-to-date is being paid for by grants?
For the engineering portion, no.
There's no way to pull that information?
No, it would be nice if we could, run a report, but other than going through all the invoices, invoice at a time, and sorting through, watch your step with the cord there. That would be the only way to do it. Sorry, EAC meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Recreation board.
Rec board.
Yeah, rec board. And I think EDC is
Downstairs.
Would that be something we're able to do with the new software coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now,
That would be nice to know. I mean, if you were able to pull that information out, then you can, feel comfortable leaving at 35, knowing that the projects we do in the future would be able to cover that with grant money.
Yep. Well, the other issue, which makes it difficult regardless of what software capability we have, is, you don't always sit in this room in the fourth quarter of one year and know exactly what your projects are going to be, because it depends on what grants you get
Right, the whims of
based
the-
on prior year applications, what projects you're gonna have funding committed for.
Funded mandates.
So there's a lot of juggling that gets involved in that. And, if you get a grant that you weren't expecting, like what we just saw recently with their library roof,
Right.
suddenly that becomes a new priority because, you got a grant for that project, but it doesn't cover 100% of it. So you're actually in a position where you're going to have to stack 2 grants together, or maybe 3, just to make it work. I mean, look how many grants the borough has had to stack over the years just to complete the MR Ryder Patriots Park conversion. I mean, that's taken years, and we're probably on grant number 6 related to that project. So it's, from an accounting perspective, though, almost, most accountants would probably tell you that's it's an unpredictable.
You're downstairs. You're downstairs. Yeah, you're in the,
Yeah,
sorry.
EDC is downstairs.
That's rec board back there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just so.
I'm sure they'd be happy to have you, though.
I want to put you on the spot. In your experience, what would you recommend?
In my experience, what I would recommend today is to stick with what you've been doing, and we will revisit this issue next year when the Edmunds package is deployed for 2021. And in 2021, we revisit it then. And hopefully we can come up with better methodology to plan. But also by that time, you're going to have, hopefully, a lot of projects completed and out of the way, be able to focus maybe on a smaller number, and maybe they're more predictable or less predictable. That's always going to depend on the grant funding. So there's always going to be that X component out there haunting you.
Never going to be able to get a real true
You're
number.
never going to have a true,
Right.
because we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants on some of that stuff, so.
Do we have a projected 2020 grant proposals?
The 2020 grant proposals will be presented to council by, well, depending on what all happens with reorganization, I would anticipate that the borough engineer will do like was done this year and the year previous, and that is early in the year, probably February, we'll bring a proposal to council for its consideration on grant applications and corresponding projects for the year, and any that may bleed over into the following year.
So we don't
Like we
have,
saw this year with CDBG, because they changed their guidelines and we had to hurry up and
get them in.
put
right.
3 in December for next year, so.
Okay. And so there's no projected, what we're planning on going after in 2020 at this point. The only reason I was asking, maybe we could have more realistic estimate anyway. But if we don't have that, we don't have that, so.
We authorized 2.
Three.
Well, three focused projects. That doesn't mean that there's not,
Another
2
couple more
grants
out there.
for this one and 1 for that one, or none for this one.
And that's just for CDBG, that's
Right.
not other stuff, so.
Okay.
I mean, you guys have all, even if this is your first year or second year on council, you've been around long enough to know that this is a lot of times hit or miss, and there's a lot of juggling involved with these grants, and you have to strike when the iron's hot. If a grant application opens that meets your project, then hopefully you get it. If you don't, you try to recycle that application in a future year.
And this might be a Micah question on page 6 of 22, Micah, under miscellaneous, 014102229. What is that 3,600 that's sitting in midair?
What line you on?
Which line?
Under miscellaneous?
229.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay, yeah, I need to get that
Okay,
deleted.
I just wasn't sure if that was a typo or what that was.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And we were probably playing with math.
Probably. All right.
Good catch.
It was one of my notes. And I don't know if this can be answered here. I was hoping the mayor would be here to ask. Under special enforcement equipment, I was wondering if there was any plan for cameras, adding to the camera program. I know we started a camera program, looked like we stopped it.
I know the chief, I believe, added an intersection or 2 this year. Some of that may have been at the tail end of last year. I might be misremembering. And really, it depends on, how his budget looks, if he thinks he can do one or not. I don't know specifically if he has any intersections planned for next year.
Yeah, most of these increases are contractual stuff.
And I did see in the Manning table, 2 additional part-timers. Was that his request?
Oh, wow, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, if you refer to tab 4, which is the wage data sheet, under the police department, previously, council had authorized 8 part-time positions. If you've seen your agenda for November's meeting yet, the chief believes, it's not a certainty yet, that we might have a part-time applicant that he would like council to act on, which would put us at 9.
Okay.
So we were going to ask council, because I know it's been talked a lot over the past year, if we could set that at 10, because even though if everything works out with the new applicant, you approve the new applicant, and that puts us at 9, technically, he's still at 8 on the roster because he has a guy who's out on injury, an extended injury, so.
That's for the full-time.
Part-time.
No, it's
Part-time.
part-time.
Okay, how many full-time does he have?
He has 10 full-timers, 10 full-time sworn police officers, and 8 part-time sworn
Make it
police
10 and
officers.
So the 10 full-time are all active?
10 full-time are all active, one's on suspension, so you're on.
Okay, so that's 9.
You're on 9, yeah.
Okay, and then we have one out on an old injury, I believe. Is he still out?
Part-time.
That's
Part-time.
Well, we
No,
also
the
have a
part-
full-timer that had an old
Oh,
injury.
there's a full-timer who's on light duty. He's
Light duty,
not-
okay, so
He's
that-
not out of service.
Okay,
He's
so that-
on light
So that
duty
makes it 8.
temporarily, yeah.
We should have an inside switch
Yeah, I
because
didn't
we
know
didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Are you counting the police chief in that 8?
Yes.
We have another officer that's
I know that.
on light duty?
You only have
It's
one
okay.
you only have one officer who's on light duty, a full-timer that's on limited duty related to an injury, and you have a part-timer who has been out and will be out on extended absence due to an injury, but that's a part-timer.
Up to 10, we should be good.
So
So
we're
like 10
gonna,
and 10.
we're gonna be suggesting going to 10. It's something that's been talked about all year, so.
But
Is there a term on that, the light duty? Is that only for a few months, do we know? I mean, so we're looking at giving 12 part-timers to cover him while he's light duty?
He'd love to have 12 if he could get 12. It's not easy to fill, I mean, part-time police officers are like gold. They're very difficult to attract and keep them, plus of course they all want to be somewhere full-time, so. But no, I don't think that would make much of a difference. It's a short-term situation.
So there wouldn't be any change in the part-time budget allocation, because we're not even
No.
coming close to using it anyway, right?
Right.
No, the police department's always well under budget
Yep.
on this particular line item,
general.
so, yeah, so they've got, I think, plenty of room to work with there, even if you raise it to 10.
Okay, yeah, they were under 50% at this point, 41.62.
Yeah, and overall, they're only at 65% through 3/4 of the year, so they're gonna come in under budget again this year. It seems, at least.
Any other questions on the police stuff? Most of that's contractual, you're gonna see. Police insurance, you got the added heart and lung was put in there this year, 13,000.
Yes. Yeah, council is certainly welcome to go line item by line item, but I can tell you the only adjustments that were accounted for are contractual obligations for employees and insurance.
Fire commission, This here, was this, the 17,000 under the planning commission expense, that's for the update, right?
What page are you?
Yeah, that was
We're on 7.
a one-time increase in the
77.
Some?
planning commission's
Update.
budget for 2019 current year because they were doing the 10-year update to the comprehensive plan,
Got it.
which is already in the works and will be done shortly. So that's no longer necessary for 2020, so we've reduced it back to
Right.
2018 budget level.
Got it, it was in and out, okay, thought that's what it was. Sanitation expenses, page 8. This is employee benefits.
So you're increasing salaries in that is because we're doing more of that this year?
It's not a salary increase, it's just a reallocation of existing salaries more realistically based on time spent. And that's,
I meant in fewer words.
that's across multiple funds, not just sanitation, so.
Oh, funny.
Man, a few words.
Get to the point, he says. Street volume? capital
Okay,
reserve
and
one?
overall water department, what's driving the $60,000 increase year over year?
Budget projections, as you know from this discussion last year, the contract with the MMA is set at a fixed amount, but our expenses increase every year.
So we need to cut back to what it covers, right?
We are hoping to mitigate that throughout the year to keep it capped at 650, but yes, anything that goes over the 650 becomes a drain on the general fund.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask this though, before I go any further from that. So will we know what the answer to that is before the final budget? Or are we gonna budget for the 710 knowing that we're only getting 650?
Well, I have to budget based on what I realistically believe expenses will be.
Right.
I cannot control this contract that's been in place and is at a set fixed amount. Attempts have been made and there was a change made last year that was certainly helpful financially towards us on a short-term basis. But that was a quick one-year fix, even though the change that was made is permanent. But that's going to continue to be a problem. There are several areas probably in the long term that this council and future councils should consider, and that is not only this issue and the fact that we should probably have a built-in provision for cost escalation in any contract, but also the fact that I think over the years, with the way new technology is going, you're going to see cable franchise revenues decline, not increase, because it's going to satellite, and that eliminates their need to have fiber optics in our right-of-ways and pay us franchise fees for the privilege of using said right-of-ways. So I think that's going to extinguish itself over time. Like you pointed out in your discussion earlier, I think the collection, the AR portfolio with Portnoy is going to decline sharply over the next year or two, and you're going to see less and less of that old debt recovered. So that all eats into the bottom line.
Guess we can't get them for violating our airspace, huh?
Okay, thank you. I don't like it, but thank you.
Okay, you're at the end of the general fund expenses, then through the revenues. Assuming you guys want to keep on rocking and rolling here. So you're on,
So let me make sure as we're going through this though, because now we're getting into those dedicated funds. The information we have on the dedicated funds does not include the increases, or does? Thank you.
The increases are not built in, they're only reflected in tab 1 and 2.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
so we're seeing the realistic
That's what I
numbers
wanted to make
as
sure.
the budget would
I
say.
thought so, I just want to make sure. More or less I wanted it to be said.
Okay, so, street lighting.
Yeah, and actually, you know, street lighting is been underfunded for years. This fund, as you may recall, caused the borough some problems a couple of years ago where some money was removed from liquid fuels as a temporary patch to, you know, help solve a problem in street lighting fund. And later audit, you remember last year, we had to put that back from the general fund, not an ideal situation. So it's been a problem since like 2014 or 2015, based on prior years that I've looked at, which is why we suggested the modest increase.
So that's not based on,
So you're asking for the 2 mills, right?
keep that, right? So you're asking for a 0.8 increase in the millage there. You're asking to get to from 1.2 to 2 full mills,
Yep.
Right.
which comes out to approximately what per household? $18, $17? I like it, but. All right, and the way this is built, then you're expecting well, so then I guess here's my question. Why are you budgeting less?
Well, we're budgeting less because we don't always know what's going to happen in this fund. You know, for example, in current year budget, and I think this was also a problem last year, we had some lightning and storm damage. We can't account for that a year in advance.
Okay.
But we're trying to be realistic with the revenue allocated to that fund.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you. So you're just basing the budget on the revenue and saying if nothing happens, we'll get through it. If something happens,
it's normal
there's gonna be
course.
deficit in that fund.
Yes.
That we'll have to rectify.
So we're just covering it?
Yes.
Squeaking by?
We're just covering it.
Understood.
Did I see something on our agenda for this month about electric?
Yes, your contract with Constellation Energy is expiring the end of the year. So we have been working with the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs. Their preferred energy broker is APPI Energy. They have a bid out for the borough's electricity, for anyone interested in bidding on the borough's, being the borough's electricity supplier. We will get that bid the day of your meeting, I believe, the 18th. The rates are locked for a 24-hour period for council to make a decision, which we'll provide you at that meeting and notify the supplier the next day.
Do we have any inkling whether they're higher than what we're paying or lower or about the same?
We have no idea what the rates are going to come in at that will be proposed, but we're anticipating multiple bidders based on the feedback we've gotten and based on municipalities around us. I'm hoping it's going to be cheaper.
Nice.
So it might be a unpredictable hidden cost savings for next year.
Or the opposite, it could be a lot more expensive.
That's true too.
Okay.
I like to be positive.
Can't touch anything in the fire fund.
Yeah. Fire fund is in and out,
Yep.
so everybody looks at those, you can see the numbers are what they should be. We'll probably pretty much go through that. We're getting to the end of the library, which is 12, page 12. At the bottom, we'll start the library fund. See their fund balance first.
Since you mentioned the library, if I may comment, based on our suggestion in tab 1 for the library fund, the library is an example of deferred maintenance. It is a nice, big, old building. And I think we all know that nice, big, old buildings require a lot of maintenance.
Yes.
And it is not getting enough of it. We need to give it more, and the only way to do that is to commit more funds to doing so. So.
You've got to look at it this way. The library's been neglected for years.
Decades.
So, I mean,
My problem raising the taxes for any kind of maintenance like that or anything to things like this that went so long. My honest opinion is it's going to end up getting thrown into salaries and never done. So if that's the interest of the next council, they can, because I'll be here, reopen and set it, but I don't have the belief that that's going to be their goal.
but I think we need to talk about setting money aside because we know that the library roof, we got that grant. We know about how much, wasn't it, John said it was what, 120, John? Yeah.
And you
So
got
the library roof is
50.
120, we have 50, hopefully we go for another grant to get the rest of the money.
And also, I think, let me manage your expectation a little, because I think that estimate we got for $120,000 was to replace the library roof with non-slate. That's
Right.
not the slate,
I think it was 275.
John,
something like that.
wasn't that like 175 or 185 or?
That was without the slate?
Yes.
Higher, yeah.
That's a composite or traditional
slate.
shingle roof. That's not to do slate. So if you want to keep the current aesthetic of the building and do slate, and by the way, our grant is for slate. So if we change direction and don't do slate,
You got to get the
we
grant
have
back.
to get the state to either approve that change or we can't use that grant funding towards it.
So that $50,000 for the roof was for a slate roof, which
Yes.
John just said is about 275.
No, 175.
170?
I was wrong.
I thought it was 185, but
All right, so 185.
We need another.
substantially more than the
Right.
grant covers.
But you
yes.
also have,
Two
I
more
mean,
grants.
at some point, we have to look at the fact that when you go in the downstairs doors of the library, the wood is rotting. The gutters are falling apart.
Actually, the gutters got done when the roof repair got done.
Well, the one gutter
Well,
by the back
I
door.
think it was just the front gutter,
spews.
not
That
the
just
back
gets
gutter.
clogged, and
Yeah.
the guys are constantly unclogging it. That's
Yep.
been known for years to do that,
Yeah.
because of trees.
Well, I mean,
Because we did do that temporary repair on the front portion because of the many
Right.
leaks and storm damage. And they took care of that, and it's, seems to have helped the problem, but they also did the gutters on that portion while they were at it, so
is there any more windows that are leaking?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know Public Works did some work with the windows there last year based on the elements coming in. I mean, when you can stand there and see, snow coming
Yeah.
and,
Standing next to it in the summer, you feel the heat coming right through them, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I know downstairs in the kitchen, can you still see the outside through the kitchen, John? I'm sorry to keep making you get up. Can you still see the outside through the kitchen in the library? I know that there was a time when you could see the outside, like the birds kept getting into the kitchen.
No, it's, the window's there, but you can't see. I mean, it's ground level. I mean, it's kind of dingy. Yeah, no, it's not like a clear view, not like one of these windows here.
Right.
So, yeah,
There's no issues with that window down there?
So it keeps the elements out.
it's fine.
Okay.
I know it doesn't help the pill go down easier in making the decision, but, what you spend there in repairs to that building will be slightly offset by saving in energy costs.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not going to be a dollar for dollar, of course, but
I mean, I would like to see some more money possibly allocated to the library fund for the repairs that building really needs. I mean, it's just been neglected for a very long time, and it's one of the few libraries that's not county-owned. And I know, I get it, unfortunately, we have to pay for it, but
See, my problem is I don't think we end up doing it. That's my problem.
Get the repairs.
Yeah. I think we end up raising taxes and we don't end up repairing it.
So
Sorry.
this amount,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
stop.
this amount at the annual 7,000, I think was actually raised a little bit, because I remember a few years ago, it was like at 5. So we had gone up to said 7, so I could have swore it was only like 5,000
For which one?
on the building maintenance. It never was really a high amount that was for that. And then part of that we pulled out when we had to pull from different funds to patch it. We pulled from there, and then 2 from our areas, right? Some of our building maintenance money on the general
Just so
side.
you know, that building maintenance line, I believe, is also used by Public Works to do grass cutting, tree trimming, snow plowing.
Oh,
So that,
so that comes out of there instead, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just for repairs and stuff, so there's no one set aside for
All
repairs.
maintenance.
Ah. You never had like a dedicated line for
Why can't we
repair?
make a dedicated line?
No, because in the previous years, it was
It was less,
always,
right?
yeah, 2015, it was 5,000.
I thought I remember that,
2016,
yeah.
it was up to 10,000.
And then back down.
And then 2017, it was up to 25,341, but you only used 2,500. And then 2018, it was 29,350, but you only used 3,400. And that's in building maintenance.
So they must have a different line for that for it.
And then 2019,
We actually maintenance the building.
Oh, there it is, building maintenance. I see it. The miscellaneous contingency line, is that used to pull out if you need some funds for extra things? Or in this case, we needed to pull for repair, you pretty much pull that for anything you need, right?
well, like, remember with the roof repair project, we actually ended up spreading that across multiple funds so that it wasn't a direct hit to the lot, because it was an unanticipated expenditure
Right,
yeah,
to the library, so.
so it's pulled from there.
2019, we spent 105 on building maintenance for the library. So. No, I'm sorry. That's what was proposed for 2019 was 105.
That's because we were including money anticipating the roof, right?
Right.
And I believe we had to pull that out
Yes.
in order
Yeah.
to balance the budget, so.
Yeah. So,
Well, council's gonna have to decide on those funds. What we're gonna do. Right now, the amount of your revenue and your expenditures as it sits is covering what you need, is for the anticipated cost of maintenance, what kind of maintenance they wanna do.
How come on the payroll for Public Works grounds, we have budgeted 5150? We have
What page?
21% used.
What?
Page 13, ends in 122.
Yeah, I see that too.
You get a couple $1,000 just sitting there in budget. That doesn't appear to be used.
Now, is that for mowing and stuff, or no? 'Cause
It
says
is,
grass.
John, what do you charge to that line?
So I can't hear him.
The-
Can't hear him. What did you say, what line?
Do you have this document
Yeah,
with you?
what line is it?
It's under library fund expenses,
122.
Page 13.
page 13,
Payroll, Public Works, grounds.
sub-account 122, payroll, public works, grounds.
That's my grass cutting labor.
Does that,
Any of the maintenance that we do,
okay.
boiler, things like that, that comes out of that line.
Shoveling,
but that's-
plowing, stuff like that.
Plowing.
Yeah, but that's a labor line, so it would only apply to labor for borough personnel, yeah.
We take 2 out of that.
That's not gonna shift anything really.
Okay, so the other one definitely is.
It's starts, money that
dedicated.
can be, because it's not, it's within a dedicated fund, but it can be used,
It
it
can go
can be
towards
switched.
maintenance
So you can go over in
instead of-
maintenance and under somewhere else, and you're okay.
So
That
between
doesn't
that
really
and-
require a change in the budget, because if you have the extra $3,000 and you want to use it in a different way, you can, because it's
Yeah.
still within the same dedicated fund.
So you could add it to the 7,023, which
Yeah.
brings you up to
Needed,
10.
just
Right.
take it out of there.
And then you
But you don't
have,
need to budget it that way. You could leave
No.
it budgeted the same way and just go high and low. As long as it pans out to the same dollar amount, it's all within the same dedicated fund, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying, should I put it in my left pocket or my right pocket?
Yeah.
It's all in the same fund.
everything else is just salary increases, right? Yeah, payroll.
Yeah.
All right, then we will move down to the recreation fund, right below that. Page 15 is the revenue side.
Well, actually, if you want to talk about the rec fund, I implore you to please, we've got to do something about the Manor Park playground. I mean, the time is going to come where our insurance carrier is going to require us to close it and remove the equipment that is there. Something has got to be done about
That's one of
that
the
playground. That is one of the CDBG grants, because we looped that together with the parking lot, our parking lot there, hoping to do that as one project.
The
but-
two structures that they're concerned about,
Huh?
the
I
two
think it's the
structures
whole
that they're.
thing.
It's the entire thing and
There's
the
really
fact that
nothing
it
wrong with
lacks the required safety surface.
Surface that
Yes.
it always has since it's been put in 20-some years ago.
Yes.
But when you look at the standards of any
Oh, I know.
playground was put
Yeah,
in
it's
then,
gotta have
just like,
that.
yeah, just like the
When
other
I know,
one.
I've asked for it for years.
When it comes to playgrounds and playground certifications and playground safety, the world has changed dramatically in the last 5 to 7 years. And
I was told the
insurance,
last time that they weren't even concerned about it. And I'm thinking,
insurance
how could they not have
carriers
been
are
concerned?
very fussy about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not the first time the borough's experienced this problem,
No.
because it happened with Williamson
Yeah.
Park, so.
But they put wood chips in there.
Yeah, their inspections
So-
are really tough.
I know.
On them.
It's getting
Do we
worse.
know
yeah.
when we'll be hearing back in reference to the grant opportunity for that?
It goes now, right? Didn't it go on?
No, it gets filed in December.
Okay, so we won't.
I'm
hear
sorry,
about
it opens in December. We hope to have it filed by the end of the year, and we will hear something probably in February or March when it goes before the commissioners.
But there's no guarantee that you're going
Nope.
to get that grant. So here we are again with
call
another
who I have to
playground, and that playground's used a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're not planning on putting equipment in with that, right? What you want to add into there?
Oh, yeah?
You want to start the playground now?
No.
Oh.
No, I mean, I think the
grant.
question was what's the grant application cover? The grant application covers the existing playground area as it stands today with the safety surface, the new equipment. It's absorbing that fenced-in cage area
Demolishing that.
to include that as playground area and to redo
So we
the
actually
parking lot.
extend the
borough
playground.
owns.
In the parking lot,
Yes.
yeah.
But also, it's going to depend on how much money we get approved for, if any,
right.
as to what we do there. That's why there's really no design yet even, because, it's too preliminary.
Right. So then you're saying we need to budget some money for the rec fund as just in case that grant does not come through, otherwise the insurance carrier will again come in and possibly close that
Our
playground.
facilities get inspected every year, and based on our encounters with them this past year, that's a very real possibility, that we will have to have Public Works go in there and clear that.
Yeah,
That equipment's probably 35 years old. That
yeah,
equipment was donated, one of the apartment complex donated that
Yeah, that's the green,
25, 30 years ago.
that's the green one, yeah.
So that's, we're talking, you can't get parts for it, you can't get nothing.
I remember when I was trying to find a slide for you.
I think I only found a slide for 1 year, and the guy said that was the last one in the country.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was actually built 22 years ago. So for this tab one, is that what you are projecting you will need to cover for that?
Tab 1 is what we're projecting,
Fund?
yes.
And that would be for new equipment?
Well, that would be to go towards whatever the plan is going to be for Manor Park Playground.
Right.
Because even if we get approved for a grant application, it may not be enough,
Right.
so. I mean, fortunately on the rec fund, I believe the rec fund is unrestricted in terms of the state millage cap, so
Yes.
council has some leeway there.
Is there any possibility for private fundraising?
That's always a possibility, yes.
So the total expenses has been upped at this point at $20,765.
Yeah, it's an increase.
Is what you're anticipating for this
Yep.
difference for what you wanted so far.
Yeah, out of rec fund, yeah,
Most of it's matching grant funds.
yes. Plus, we did adjust that line.
Anybody else on the rec?
Yep.
Sinking fund is only used for cover cost. That's all that's used for, so it's kind of an in and out. You're doing your ACI contract out of there, your principal and your interest. That's the only thing that's being used for. I don't know that anybody has anything they would like to say about that. It's pretty in and out.
Can't change it.
No. It's
It
your
is
loan.
what it is.
It has to be there, yeah, it's your loan. Where it goes in, and you have to show it's going out. Next one is your street fund.
So street fund contingency going up quite a bit.
Where you at? 18?
19.
Oh, 19? Oh, you
It's
jumped.
all the way at the
Oh,
bottom of the
18.
expenses.
Oh,
Well, it's just a street fund.
yeah, that's where I'm at, right? Okay, yeah.
So what's driving those increases? Especially when we're so much lower. And I know we wanted to do roads and so forth, but this is more of the maintenancing of them. What's the anticipation with specifically the contingency? I can just, I guess, in snow plowing,
looks
I mean, is there, I guess, anything?
There's a balance forward.
Oh, I'm
No,
still, I'm
he's on the
looking at
next page.
expenses.
He's on the next page.
Oh,
looking at
You're on the back
expenses.
page. Get on the page.
I'm sorry.
So
looking at it
is there
as a
any
whole.
data that's saying that there's gonna be more snow, less snow?
No, this is about Momo problems,
Okay, why? Tell me.
because we've got potholes, sinkholes galore. I
Okay.
mean,
No, I agree.
yeah.
Okay, so that's really what,
Yeah.
the increase is?
The other
looks like
advantage
labor,
of
street
having
repairs and paving.
newer
Roads,
streets
yeah.
is your public works resources aren't,
Filling potholes.
Doing full patch.
aren't chasing potholes that have to be the same ones every 2-3 weeks,
Like Palmer Avenue.
and can do more meaningful work.
Like Melvin. I know they're out there all the time on Melvin. We're graders like on Nolan.
Palmer,
Yep.
right by the school.
Yeah,
There's
that
a
one
huge,
spot.
yeah, there's that
Yeah,
huge one
there's water
there.
there.
There's a huge one there now, John,
There's water there
right
constantly.
there on Palmer.
It's water, it's laying, it's spring,
Yep.
spring in there, and that water is under the road there.
I know.
High water table, we have all the rain we've had, it's It's a lot.
I know that one right there in front of, it's the second house in from the school. It's getting bigger.
We'll take a look tomorrow, we're out tomorrow doing that, so.
Yeah.
And between, in the past year and a half, between the borough and the MMA, we've tackled a lot of roads.
Right.
But it's just a needle in a haystack.
All the roads we have.
All right.
Pin drop.
20 years.
Hey,
EMS fund, in and out.
In and out.
See the numbers, so we can flip past that. Pensions, we all know what that was. We actually did well on pensions this year. So unless you have any questions on those, we can flip through that. You know about your MMO numbers. State highway liquid fuels.
so expect to come in lower for liquid fuels tax?
We are, yes. In fact, we've been informed of our 2020 allocation, and it's about, what was it, about $14,000 less, or $16,000, yeah.
Really?
Decrease?
Yeah. But over last year, but remember, last year we got an increase over prior year, so,
Is there a particular rhyme or
2 years
reason
ago.
for it, or?
no.
No.
They just tell us what it
It's
is.
PennDOT hocus pocus.
Oh, there's no
You get a
formula.
spreadsheet with all the municipalities laid
Well,
out, and they say, here it is.
Yeah, there is a formula. It's based on population and miles of road and,
I think they look at road width as well. Like, there's all kinds of stuff they look at.
So
Justin would be able to tell you.
that's it.
Come on, man. You're supposed to know all that stuff.
So that's a crapshoot every year as to what you're gonna get.
well, we know what it is and we have it in here.
Okay,
It's the 248, 858.
All right.
okay.
Well, that stinks.
Does that come close to covering what Gilmore put in our packet for 2020 road program?
No,
No, it's like 100,000 off.
which is again why we're suggesting that with our own street fund, we augment our liquid fuels funds so that we can tackle more road repaving.
That stinks.
But there's going to be carryover from the prior year, right?
Of liquid fuels? Yes.
Quite a bit.
Not
what
much.
we used to.
No. No, well, not the 1 year, but we're still going to have, what, like 300,000 carryover?
No.
No?
Remember, we spent, we're about to spend, because we haven't gotten the bill yet, for our last road repaving
Okay,
project,
that's
which
why.
is going
I was
to
gonna say,
be
we're at 140 on 558.
slightly
Okay,
below
all right. Fair enough.
$300,000,
All
so.
right, that's what I'm missing. Okay.
Road repaving is an expensive proposition.
Unless you don't do it.
And that's what got us where we are now.
Well,
It wasn't done.
Well, you just spend what you have, do what you have.
Which you can.
Oh.
So that about does it then, right?
We told that we had to get all new street signs or something. With the names on, has that not been implemented yet?
I don't think we got the grant for that.
Well, there is a federal mandate that all street signage be updated to meet the new standards. We did get a grant to partially do some of ours, which will be matched by in-kind contribution of Public Works labor for installation.
Did we order those signs yet?
No, I don't think we've ordered them because the state hasn't given us the money yet. Yes.
Yeah, those aren't street signs, those aren't street name signs, though.
No, those are not street names.
Yeah.
Those are
No.
your road signs.
Yeah, road signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop signs. Was that stop signs too?
Yes.
We have all different size stop signs. So for this, do you have an idea as to how much the increase would be per household?
For household, no, but that would be, if council did the whole ask, it would be about a 5.5% increase over the overall budget. We don't have the broken down by household, but we could do that for you if you wanted.
It's a big ticket.
Yep. So does council want time to chew on this, and do you want to regroup tomorrow evening, or do you want to bang this out tonight, or?
I think I'd like to chew on this a while, because this is a big ticket.
Yeah.
That's a big ticket. You know, so
There's no controls on it, so I'm really not a fan of it.
I think everybody take a look at that budget, decide what you're willing to do. That's a big chunk of change. Big chunk of change.
Yeah, it's an extra, what, 1.3, almost $1.4 million.
Well,
If you went to the 2350 for mills. So it would be an extra $400,000. It's a
There's
lot
no
of
guarantee
money.
any of it gets done.
and your mills are just under
No
60,
guarantee
so.
any of it gets done, you know.
So how
Yeah,
much
it's
about 400?
it's a little over 6 mils, 6.65 mils for a revenue increase of $395,497, which is about a 5.5% increase, right? $7.1 million budget, yeah, about 5.5% increase over the overall budget, so. And I don't think, I wasn't here, but I don't think there's been in, 3 years or 4 years?
3 years.
So,
Yeah, let's look back at the former budgets. I know we did do an increase in the library at one point. We did do some in the rec. But I'd have to look back on the old budget to see how far back it went.
I had some in my bag.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. I just happened to carry one. I can't help it.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So since we went through this budget, is the thought to just eliminate the need to come in tomorrow and discuss this
Well,
at the agenda meeting, or?
It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. If you
I'd rather
want
mow it over the weekend and.
Because we're coming back tomorrow, I don't think anything is going to
I mean,
change.
yeah.
would council rather put a pin in this and we carve out some time at your agenda meeting on Tuesday?
Yep.
And maybe talk about it more then?
Sure.
Instead of tomorrow night? It's up to you.
Can you give us a breakdown of the cost per household?
Sure.
So I
What
think
did we say
council's
it
going to
was?
have to look at all these increases.
6.65 mils? Extra?
Yes, 6.65 mils.
And 1 mil is, what was it, 61?
Well, we use 59, but.
59?
Yeah, that's
It's
a
either one.
discounted number they're using.
Yeah, like 97% of the population pays on the discounted rate, so that's why we use
Because we got to save wherever we can. Are you kidding? Getting killed. Got to save.
Hey, get the discount. Yeah. It's like 2%, isn't it?
Yeah, what the heck? Let them out of my house.
That can't be right.
No,
I don't think so.
not even close.
All right, so everyone has this. I think you have like the whole weekend then to chew it over, cry a little bit, throw it all against the wall, come back with different numbers.
Trying to figure out.
And then decide what you want to do as far as what you're willing to put in the budget. What are you doing? So everyone's okay with officially canceling the meeting for tomorrow? We're not coming back tomorrow, right? Okay.
What was the percentage,
We'll do that?
No,
5.5%
I thought you said it was
over the
6.65.
current budget,
Mils.
6.65 mils, yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it by the
You
mills.
just do it. Okay, then if there's no other questions, we are going to adjourn
I'll be here a while, so
at
take your time.
8:55. I mean, oh, God. Oh, sorry.
Well, then why are we even considering it? Because what they're gonna do is
7:54, thanks. I didn't change my
hire their friends and
mind.
say, look, we have a surplus. I'll be right back. Why would you do that?